Well, hello, hello, hello. It's so good to be with you guys, wherever you may be watching right now. You might be in your Connect groups. You guys might be on the train on the way to work. You might be having your own personal devotional time. Wherever you might find yourself, welcome to the ways of Jesus. I'm with my good friend Dave here, and we're excited to be able to go through this little bit of a series with you.
Yeah, it's great. So good to be with you, and I'm excited to be able to, kick this off. How good is it to get Ways of Jesus happening? And it's been a long time coming.
Today's the introduction into our series, so it's good to be taking ground.
So strap yourself in and open your ears. You're going to hear some good stuff today. So
hopefully that's the case.
Yeah. So let's kick it off, hey? We're talking about the way of Jesus, or the ways of Jesus. And Dan, can you tell us, what is this all about?
Yeah. So when we read through biblical history, we look at the first century, we will see that the way of a rabbi, that would be very common. And so every rabbi had a yoke, it had a teaching, but then they also had a way. And then all of the rabbis had disciples.
Yep.
And just like Jesus had disciples, and we are now his disciples, the disciples of the time, they followed his way, they followed his teaching, they followed in the footsteps of their rabbi. And in so many ways, we are called to do the same thing as well, to follow his way. And as you look at the life of Jesus, if you look at his practices, there were specific things that he did over and over and over again. And so what we're hoping to do is unpack some of those and not replace, this is not an entrance into salvation. This is not going to replace doctrine that we obviously stand for, but this is in order to try and find some of those rhythms and some of those routines and practices that we believe is going to help us to become more like Jesus. And so in some ways, this is about spiritual formation.
Yeah.
It's about being formed into likeness of Christ. And so I guess we sort of sat down a little bit beforehand and considered, well, what's a definition? What's a example? What's something that we can help our church to be able to understand what is spiritual formation? And I know you've been able to go away.
Yeah, definitely. Having a working definition helps. So we know when we can keep our true north. And so for us as a church, the spiritual formation, a definition of that would be this. Spiritual formation is the process of being formed in the image of Christ for the sake of others.
Awesome. So when I hear that definition, I hear two key things. There's a forming. In other words, there's the process. There's an intentionality about being formed into something. Our reality is that we're all being formed into something, whether we like it or not. And so our hope is that we become more like Christ. We get formed into the likeness of Christ. That's the first area. And the second area, which I really like, is it's not just for our benefit, but it's for the benefit of others, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah, and that's the reality. Like even in that definition, Christ is right in the center of that, because we've got to realize it's all about him and our journey toward him. And so, focusing on Jesus, but also realizing that Jesus' heart was for others, so that we should have a heart for others as well.
Correct. Our heart is certainly to be able to reach others and indeed to become more like Christ in all that we do. So this is kind of like the basis, the foundation of this series, The Ways of Jesus, in order for us to be understanding the practices so that we can be indeed formed into his likeness.
Yeah.
And indeed, hopefully see the glory of God throughout our church and our community and all that we do. Well, a question, I guess, for you then would be, who's this for? Is this just for the spiritual elite? Is this just for, the big dogs out there? Like, who is this actually for?
Look, it's for everybody. Every single one of us is somewhere on a journey, whether we're further down the track or not, or we might be new to it, but every one of us can grow.
Yeah.
So this spiritual formation, what we're doing here, the way of Jesus, it's for everyone.
So whether you've been a Christian literally for no time, or even on your journey towards faith, or whether you've been a part of the church, part of faith for many, many years, this is for everyone.
Definitely.
And that's our encouragement, right? So this is that open invitation, which you're actually going to see in this particular scripture we want to refer to right now, which is actually a bit of a foundational one for us, which is Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30. And we're going to read from the Message version here today, which says, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burnt out on religion? Our hope and our prayer is that we be a church that this is not the testimony for.
Yeah.
But then it's almost like a bit of an antidote. There's a bit of like an answer to this. Like, if that's the case, this is now what Jesus wants us to do. He says, come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take real rest Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I love that, the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. What a beautiful promise that is. What a the promise of Scripture that as we do these things, the promise is that we'll be able to live freely and lightly. Yeah. And I don't know about you, church. That's something that I deeply desire for my own life, for my own family, but indeed for our church. And so within that Scripture, there's a few invitations, there's a few instructions. And the first one I noticed when we start off is this instruction or this command of come to me. Yeah. What do you think?
Look, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Jesus gives us an invitation. It's exactly what it is. He's not going to force you or force us to do it. It's an invitation to say, I want you to be willing to come to me. And so, there's this willingness inside of us to pursue that process of coming to Christ and learning how to do that and how to connect with him. I think the important thing here is you're not coming to church as such. It's not coming to religion. It's not about doing, it's about being with him. And out of that being, we will do things. But there's this willingness inside of us to come to Christ because he's invited us in. He's got an open door policy with us.
That blows me away, that the Son of God, the sovereign King, invites us into that space. What an opportunity that we have to be able to meet with him a bit like when Moses in Exodus 33, he has this moment where he meets God face to face. There's this opportunity, and he speaks to him like a friend. And this is the same picture I believe that we have for as we come to him, this beautiful invitation that we get to be able to receive. But it's on us. If I receive an invitation from a friend for a birthday party, I get to choose whether I go or not. I've got good friends, so I often go to the parties. But it's often a response that I get to have. The invitation is one thing, but then there's obviously a response that we get to have as well as an intentionality.
It's intentional.
All right, so come to me is the first little bit there. Then it says in the Scripture, it says, get away with me. What's that saying?
Look, it's one of those things. It's like an intentional stopping and making a decision to build routines and invest in routines that walk with Jesus. Like there was guys, on the road to Emmaus. They were walking with Jesus. They didn't know it at the time until the end, but there was a process. There was this conversation happening that revealed Christ to them. So that's what I feel like he's saying here. He's saying, come and get away with me. Take some time out. Everyone knows a good holiday is really good for us. And it's kind of like in our faith, getting away with Jesus is really good for us. So.
And it is our world is so busy right now. It's so full on. There are distractions everywhere.
Oh, definitely.
And, this call, this invitation to get away is actually get yourself out of the rat race on a daily, on a scheduled kind of time where we can actually invest into our relationship with God.
No, I think that's in that intentional motive. So I need to shift some things.
Yes.
Because currently, it's not happening, but I want it to happen.
And maybe in this series, as we talk about the ways of Jesus, there will be actually some shifting, some reorganization of our diaries, of our lives, in order to have these things placed as a priority.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think so. I think, for me, I've had to readjust my life and work with my life though too. So it's not just about, being hard and fast with things all the time. It's about, how can I make this work so it's regular? And that I'm actually consistently doing this. So
we got come with me. We got get away with me. That's one part was that there's walk with me. What's that sort of saying?
Well, it's the pace to the journey, right? The one thing you see in the Gospels is that Jesus never really ran anywhere. I don't recall, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the majority of the time at least, he walked.
Yes.
And there was a pace to his walking, and the disciples were the same. They walked places. They didn't run everywhere. They walked. They
didn't get ahead of Jesus.
No, they didn't get ahead of Jesus either. So this idea that, we walk with Jesus, that this journey, this faith journey we're on, it's not a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
That's right.
And understand that we don't have to get there fast. We just want to get there.
Yes.
Because the way we get there is important. And it's more important than the destination.
That's right.
Like walking with him is so important. I think we've got to remember all the time that it's a relationship.
Yes.
It's not religion.
That's it.
It's relationship.
100%, 100%. So walk with me, it talks about the pace there. Then secondly, the last that we have, work with me, watch how I do it.
Yeah.
Work with me.
So one of the things John Mark Comer talks about is being an apprentice of Jesus. And so if you take that idea of an apprentice, and he says, watch how I do it. That's what an apprentice does. Apprentice watches, then practices, watches, then practices. And so, we have this role to play in this process of learning, to be teachable and to be open to this whole process of the invitation that Jesus has given us to come with him. And I think at the end of the day, that's a noble venture in our life to do.
It's actually a really good picture for us as disciples to take on that role of the apprentice.
Ah, definitely.
And again, it works in with, the idea of, making sure it's the right pace and getting away with God. But we are to, as we spend time in his word, as we spend time in his presence, we get to understand the true character of who God is. And as we do that, we get to then become more like him, just like an apprentice would with a master builder.
Yeah.
And so as God being the master builder, we are seeking to become more like Jesus in all that as well.
Yep, definitely. I think it's about realizing you're never going to get there until the day you stand before God.
In the glory of heaven.
So, to be someone that says, you know what, I'm not a know-it-all. I don't think I've arrived.
Yes.
There's so much more I can learn. And I think if we have that teachable heart, then this working and walking and getting away with Jesus is going to be really good for us to grow in our faith.
Especially if in your Connect groups, we're going to encourage you guys maybe even just dive into that scripture a little bit more. Like talk about how we come to him, how we get away with him, how we find ourselves walking with him and working with him and seeing how he does it.
Yeah.
And in that, we want to make this series as practical as possible.
Yeah.
We don't just have two guys between a big drum talking to you guys, but actually have an opportunity to make this a part of our lives. Let it shape us, let it transform us into his likeness. And so if we would touch on one of those things, we talk about the invitation at the start there, they come into him. What would you encourage, those who are watching today? Where do you start? What sort of things would you do?
Yeah, look, definitely, just finding time in your day, in your month, regularly is this getting away with Jesus. Come to me. The whole idea of come to me, that invitation of like just starting the process.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's going to look really, really hard, like hard work, because it's like, oh, well, I'm not actually doing it much. That's okay. Look, God's not upset with you. It's like, he's like, all God desires, all Jesus wants is to spend more time with us.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like just going, okay, where can I find a space in my world where this will work? For me, I get up every morning with my son, take him to work at, drop him off at 6 o'clock, come back, and I have about 45 minutes before my other kids get up for school and my wife. So I just go home, I make a coffee, I sit in front of my fire with my Bible. I might do a Bible study on the Bible app or something like that, and then pray and spend time with Jesus as often as I can.
As I talk with lots of people and I ask them, hey, how's your walk with God going? One of the very first things that often comes back at me, they get a bit embarrassed and they say, Dan, I actually don't necessarily spend too much time with God outside of a Sunday. And our encouragement, if that's your story, if that's where you are, drop any kind of shame, any kind of condemnation. Like really, it's about, hey, let's start. Let's get on this journey of spending intentional time with Jesus. And you might be able to ask your Connect group leader, you might ask one of your campus pastors, someone to be able to help you on that journey. But we want to be a part of that journey of like, hey, let's begin this journey. Let's get on that kind of bus. And because the destination where we're heading, the journey with that, it's really exciting.
True.
We're gonna wrap up. Basically, from here, this is a bit of an introductory kind of starting point. Next month, we're going to speak into the practice of silence and solitude. And
looking forward to it.
About 9 or 10 other practices that we're going to touch on, and we're going to encourage people to be challenged by and shaped by. But certainly, we're excited to be able to have a bit of teaching, but also a bit of an encouragement for us to pick this up and make it a part of our everyday walk with God.
And make it practical.
Yeah.
Now let's live it out.
Totally.
So, definitely.
Have a good one, guys.
Pleasure.